He sticks around 2 more years past his LA contract. He's looking at you, and he's going to finish in a 7 or 8 spot in assists. He will also be inside the top 50 in rebounds, and he played small forward for most of his career. Look, you could point at Larry Legend, Larry Bird, and say, well, he was a small forward too. And that's fair. I mean, I think I would split hairs and say Larry played a lot more power forward, but it's fair. But still, that's one category. Larry Legend is only 150 rebounds ahead of LeBron, so he will clearly get passed next year. So again, as a complete player, LeBron is fantastic. Overall, all-time, rebounding, scoring, and assists. Now look, Michael's numbers are nothing to sneeze at. He now sits 5th behind Kobe, Karl Malone, Kareem, and of course LeBron. In rebounding, LBJ is currently 58th, will be in 50. Michael is at 128th. Again, it's great for a shooting guard, but it's illustrative that his focus is scoring, not rebounding. Same thing on assisting. Michael Jordan, 45th. LeBron, somewhere in the top 10. Again, great numbers for Michael. And it is part of why he is one of 2 or 3 of the best players. He's most people's number 1 player of all time. But it's clear that he and LeBron are 2 different types of players. So this narrative that, well, it took LeBron so much longer to score as many as Michael, of course it did. They're different players. And people just use that fact to say, well, since it took longer, Michael's a better player. No. It's the same stupid reasoning that if you say, well, LeBron is 3-6 in the finals and Michael is 6-0 or 6 of 6, then Michael is clearly better. That's just not the way this works. It's more nuanced than that. LeBron's overall contribution to the game is beyond having 3 wins in 9 finals appearances. I think it hurts him. I'm not saying it's dispositive one way or the other. But to say that scoring means everything is untrue and clearly plays out. Okay, one final point on LeBron and him passing Michael Jordan is the, air quotes, celebration of the moment. It is clear that LeBron James misjudged what being a Laker is and who Lakers fans are. I think LeBron expected to high-five Jack Nicholson and Snoop Dogg on every three-point make. I think he expected the forum to be filled with A-list celebrities, and millionaires and billionaires would embrace him as he built his empire in the entertainment world while playing an insane level in the NBA, considering this is his 16th NBA season. I think what LeBron found out instead is that LA fans are a lot like, well, Cleveland fans. Look, the industries and the paychecks may vary, but most Los Angeles basketball fans are hardworking, regular people, considering that they're from Los Angeles. They expect hard work and 100% commitment to basketball, or at least the perception that you are more committed to being a Laker and the team and the city than you are rapping with 2 Chainz or promoting a movie or making another TV show. They want LeBron to embrace them so they can embrace him. That is the way sports works, LeBron, and you're missing the boat. As a result, the Lakers fans, they were respectful, but they were demure in comparison to what that moment could have and should have been. Think about if LeBron had remained with Cleveland. The roof of the Quicken Loans Arena would have exploded in that moment. And I think LeBron deserved that if he had made the right decision, which was to stay in Cleveland. Again, as a Cleveland fan, I am a little bit happy about the struggles he's had in LA. One of those reasons is this moment could have been much larger. So, in a way, the celebration of his moment is an example of what is to come for LeBron as he makes more NBA history in front of a fan base that is more apathetic than it should be to one of the best NBA players of all time and one of the best players in the game today. LeBron does not shoulder all of the burden that has befallen the Lakers. I'm convinced that people do not want to do business with the Los Angeles Lakers brand. Jeannie Buss is not well liked among owners. She treated Jerry West poorly, and he is an icon in the NBA. And people did not like the handoff of the organization to Phil Jackson for many years. Magic Johnson, he is a new president of basketball operations, and he has limits on him from the Buss family that is making his job pretty hard. Rob Pelinka, he is a new GM who was an adversary of many of these current GMs. All of this is going to make getting deals really hard. That, and they have made some bad choices. This lineup is bad. These veterans can't shoot. They are looking at where they're going next year because they're on one-year contracts. And these young players, look, they bear a burden here too. Some of them are really talented, but they got butthurt because they are or may be traded. This is how the NBA works, you guys. Trades happen. Get over it. Suck it up, Pooh Bear. But they have become fallen now with season-ending injuries, Ingram and Lonzo Ball, or poor play. Hart, you can't make a three-point shot if you were given $1 million per three. The only one who continues to be at his level and just seems to understand the professionalism of professional basketball is Kyle Kuzma, and he deserves credit for that. But lineup aside, LeBron has a lot of work to do. Not only to do his part to rebuild the on-court product, but to embrace the off-court public and the fans. Reports are rampant that he is struggling with the adjustment. And unlike last time, when he had Dwayne Wade to help him in Miami, he is on his own, and he will have to navigate difficult waters over the next couple years. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. If you're listening to the podcast, quick music, then a rejoin, and we will be back with Scott Longert, author of Bad Boys, Bad Times, to discuss his book, The Cleveland Indians, Who is the Best Indian of All Time, and more. Thanks for listening. This is John O'Donnell on Cinder Block Sports, and we will be right back.
Cinder Block Sports is your weekly recap. It's about host John O'Donnell's view on the week in sports, including interviews with interesting personalities, John's opinions on topics that you may have missed, and entertainment through analysis of the sports we love. Now, from the Dream Big Studios, here's John O'Donnell.
And we are back. We are joined now by Scott Longert. Scott is a baseball historian, specifically with the Cleveland Indians. He has written 3 full-length books on the Indians, The Best That They Could Be, which is chronicling really the Dodgers-Indians pennant race and how that unfolded. His book before this latest one, No Money, No Beer, No Pennants, is a great look at the Great Depression era Indians. And now, this latest book released just this month, Bad Boys and Bad Times. That chronicles really 1937 through 1941, and I'll let Scott explain better what all that means. But Scott, welcome to the program. How are you today?
Oh, thank you, John. I'm doing very well. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Well, I want to jump right into kind of your view of baseball and what you bring readers, and I want to compare that to today's sports fans. So technology and access has expanded. Most sports fans are really not focused on the history, but your books, they really do chronicle the history of the Indians. And when you do it, I think you chronicle a lot of American history and culture as well. So I want to ask kind of a two-part question. What made you want to capture these specific periods of baseball and the Indians? And then in doing so, what did you learn about American culture during all your research and the writing of these books?
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing for me is that I'm very much a historian. So those times that the Indians played at back 100 years ago, 70 years ago, I think there was a lot to be learned from that time about not just the players and baseball itself, but the time period and the people, and of course the culture. So that's what really got me interested. What I try to do in the books is hopefully educate people about that time period, what we were going through, what was happening, and we were between two world wars, a Great Depression, Cleveland Municipal Stadium was built, Babe Ruth was flourishing. So that's what I want to bring back to people rather than stats and statistics, just to give a good portrait of what was life like back in the 1920s through the 30s and up to 1940s, what the average American would be doing, the type of jobs they had and the things they could do socially and in other areas. And that's what I try to do. I think in looking at it, you can find parallels back then to what we're doing now with things that are happening, that history does repeat itself. And I think things that were relevant in the 20s to the 40s are still relevant today.
Well, I call it the anti-Twitter. As I was reading your book and when I reviewed it, Twitter I think they've expanded it, but it was 144 characters. What can you tell the world in 5 sentences? But in your book, the level of detail is just amazing. Your detail events, things that happened 70 years ago. And there's a lot of precision. There's a lot of recall. Can you just give us an idea of the kind of research you did in getting those details, and in general, the process of recording the type of history that you've recorded here?
Oh, sure. Well, my education in college was American history. My graduate work was in American history post-Civil War up to past the Great Depression. And my career, I was a park ranger in the National Park Service. So having that kind of background, really, that's what you focus on in looking for these kind of things. As far as research goes, obviously, I'm a trained historian and trained in research, so I understand how to look for things and how to find them. But I think you have to go to the sources that you can, any firsthand sources you can, and look them up. And that entails doing a lot of newspaper work and magazine work from the 20s to the 40s or 70 years ago. The basic thing to do, which I always do, which really is the most helpful, is going to the National Baseball Hall of Fame, the library, and getting the player files that I need. Usually a player file will have a good deal of content of clippings from the guy's career. It'll have articles that might have been saved, statistics, and if you're lucky, some letters back and forth from players or family and things. And that gives you a pretty good picture of the actual player. From there, it's a matter of going to the newspapers at the time and filling out the stories. If you have a clipping about a great game a player had July 10th, 1933, you can go back to the newspapers and look it up and see what the stories were written and things about them. And that's how you form a pretty good basis for doing the research. And on top of that, generally, if a player came from a somewhat small town or small area, the local historical society or library will usually keep a file on the player so you can get things out of there as well. And if you're lucky, you might be able to contact a family member, a great-grandson or granddaughter or a cousin who has been the family historian, and they'll fill you in some details about the ball player. In my most recent book, Bad Boys, Bad Times, I was able to find Ray Mack's son, who's still an attorney in downtown Cleveland. He was very helpful. And Raleigh Hemsley still has family in southern Ohio. I spoke with his great-nephew, and he filled me in a lot of detail. So doing all these things, you get a pretty detailed picture of the players and the times, and you're able to go forward.
Well, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So you being able to pull up detail from, and you said it 100 years ago in some of your books, and well over 70 years now, is really impressive. And we're talking to Scott Longert, author of Bad Boys, Bad Times, a great chronicle of the late 30s and early 40s Indians. I want to go to the book a little bit. I think the period you covered for diehard Indians fans is going to be best remembered for Bob Feller. Mm-hmm. He had a 27-win season in which the Indians lost his last game, and they did not make the pennant. Now, great pitcher, and I just kind of want you to walk us through a little bit what you learned about Bob, his time as a Cleveland Indian, and where do you put him in the list of all-time Indians greats?
Oh, sure. Bob Feller, of course, he's one of the great all-time pitchers, one of the great all-time players, and he was a very interesting character. He went through a lot of things from a young boy all the way up to his career. As we know, or some may not know, he started pitching for Cleveland when he was 17 years old. Think about that today. A junior in high school pitching in the major leagues. It's just would even think about it. But back then, he was that talented and ready to go. And also at that time, time, he was signed illegally by the Indians. There was a rule in Major League Baseball that you could not sign a player directly out of high school to the major leagues. It had to be done through one of your minor league teams or some you had an affiliation with, so they could develop the player and earn some dollars